Hello, hello, how are you? Welcome to another Agricolor Reacts. Today with Eric Calero.
Hello.
And be watching, I actually forgot what the title is.
The time Colonel Sanders tried to kill the competition by trying to literally murder its manager.
Huh, interesting. Yeah, it's from today I found out as well, so it's gonna be interesting. Let's just get into it. And you can see it, and you can see it, and let's start.
This video is brought to you by Blinkist. The first 100 people to go to blinkist.com/TIFO will get 1 week to try it out. You'll also get 25% off if you want the full membership, which you probably will. And
we should
let's
try
get into it.
Blinko.
Born September the 9th, 1890 in Henryville,
1890?
Indiana, Harlan Sanders wasn't exactly born with a silver spoon in his mouth. His father passed away when he was 6 and his mother had to work several jobs to make ends meet. Because of this, he was tasked with looking after his two
like people today in the United
siblings
States
and taking
that work
care of the
several
home,
jobs.
which is where his passion and skill at cooking first began. From here, needing to help provide for the family, he entered the workforce at the age of 10 as a farmhand, making $2, around $60 per month. At 15, he was working on a streetcar, taking fares and making change. When he was 16, he went looking for adventure and forged documents saying he was of age to enter the army. He ultimately served 3 months in Cuba before being honorably discharged. After this, he made his way to Alabama and over the next 20-plus years worked at a variety of jobs, including railroad worker, insurance salesman, country lawyer, Ohio River steamboat ferry operator, a tire salesman, fireman, and secretary to the Chamber of Commerce in Columbus, Indiana. At the end of this, for 6 years, he was the operator of a gas station, his longest tenured job before it was closed due to the Great Depression. And so it was that in 1930, at the age of 40, broke and having already failed several times in the workforce,
That's all
he made
before
his way to Corbin,
1930,
Kentucky, where the Shell Oil
those jobs.
Company agreed to allow him and his family to live at a recently built gas station if he would help run it. This brings us to the story of the hour. That time the Colonel got into a gunfight with a rival gas station worker, resulting in the death of one of those involved. So, what happened? It started with an advertising sign. You see, the manager at the neighboring Standard Oil gas station, Matt Stewart, decided one day to paint over a nearby Shell advertising sign. This resulted in Sanders repainting the sign, only to see Stewart paint over it again, this time in plain sight of Sanders and 2 Shell district managers who were meeting with the Colonel at that time. And with that, well, it was on. As anyone would do upon witnessing such a dastardly deed, the trio grabbed their guns and headed out to confront Stewart. A heated argument ensued, with guns on both sides being pulled, and the whole thing devolving into a firefight in which Sanders successfully shot Stewart, but not before one of the Shell managers, Robert Gibson, was himself shot and killed. Luckily for Sanders and all of us who enjoy KFC, however, as Stewart had shot at the trio first, Sanders would get off scot-free. It was self-defense, you see. This was despite, the trio being the ones to approach the lone Stewart, packing their guns. And so it was that Stewart went to jail for murdering Gibson. His sentence was 18 years, but he died 2 years in, killed by a deputy sheriff, with rumors swirling that the sheriff had been paid by Gibson's family to off Stewart, though the sheriff wasn't charged with any crime here. Moving back to the gas station,
I should make a movie out of it.
ultimately got the bright idea of
I would see
feeding
that.
the many motorists who would stop for gas and ask for recommendations on a good place to eat nearby. He started by serving them in his own dining room, but then expanded to opening a cafe. With this going well, he bought out the motel across the street and turned it into a 142-seat restaurant. By 1935, business was booming, and the governor of Kentucky, Ruby Laffan, officially bestowed Harlan Sanders the title of Colonel in recognition of his contributions to the state's cuisine. He would be commonly called Colonel Sanders from that point forward. If you're wondering, the honor of Kentucky Colonel began in 1813, and it started as a military role. After the War of 1812, Charles S. Todd was named a Kentucky Colonel, so he would continue to serve as a military liaison for the governor. By the late 19th century, it was more of a symbolic honor given to those chosen to stand guard at state functions and social events. And if you're further wondering why Colonel is pronounced the way it is, rather than Colonel or something, you're going to have to wait until the bonus facts to learn about that one. You might think that after receiving this honor, and with business booming, it would be easy street for the new colonel here. But instead, Sanders would have major trouble keeping his business afloat. To begin with, a fire in 1939 burned down the entire restaurant, but He rebuilt it. A year later, along with a new motor court, Sanders Court and Cafe was back on its feet and selling chicken like gangbusters to travelers making their way on US 25, a major north-south route in America. Unfortunately for him, in the early 1950s, a junction on Route 25 was relocated, significantly reducing traffic by his restaurant, causing his business to go down the tubes. The final nail in the coffin was when the route of the new Interstate 70 was announced, and it did not swing by Sanders Court and Cafe either, but rather routed everyone about 7 miles away. And so it was that at the age of 62, the Colonel sold his restaurant and motor court, barely making enough to pay off his debts, and he hit the road with his pressure cooker, hoping to convince others to use his recipes in their restaurants in exchange for a small commission. His general method here was to go to a restaurant, cook his chicken, including demonstrating how to use the pressure cooker. If the owner liked what he made, then he'd try to convince them to let him make the chicken for the customers. Incidentally, during this tour is when he first met a young Dave Thomas, future founder of the Wendy's franchise, who would eventually play an integral role in saving KFC when it was going down the tubes before himself founding Wendy's. And we've got more on that in the bonus facts as well. So, going back to the Colonel, sleeping in his car and broke again, he finally got one Pete Harmon, owner of the Do Drop Inn in Salt Lake City, Utah, decided to make a deal to license his recipe and chicken cooking methods. With a handshake agreement in 1952, Salt Lake City became the first city with a Kentucky Fried Chicken franchise. Within 7 years of this, Sanders had made over 200 such deals in the US and Canada. Colonel Sanders was finally a permanent success, and at the age of 74 in 1964, he decided to take it easy, selling the company for $2 million, about $16 million today, plus a salary of about $40,000 per year, about $300,000 today, for the rest of his life, in exchange for his staying on as the spokesman and the face of Kentucky Fried Chicken. Unfortunately for him, as so often happens when a founder of a company sells or involves outside investors, he was quickly at odds with the board running KFC over their changing of recipes, often to save money. He particularly hated their so-called original recipe chicken, which he called fried double stock bison chicken. He also didn't care for the changes to the gravy recipe, noting, "My God, that gravy is horrible. They buy tap water for 15 to 20 cents 1,000 gallons, and then they mix it with flour and starch and end up with pure wallpaper paste." Company executives responded publicly, stating, "Let's face it, the Colonel's gravy was fantastic, but you had to be a Rhodes Scholar to cook it." This eventually culminated in him trying to separate himself from KFC by starting a new chicken restaurant. When KFC interfered with his new business, he sued them for $122 million. The lawsuit was eventually settled out of court, with Sanders getting $1 million and being allowed to continue to operate his new restaurant, which is still around today, called Claudia Sanders Dinner House in
I definitely gotta try that. Man,
his life traveling,
Claudia Sanders.
cooking chicken,
Where is
and
that?
giving
I gotta find out where they
surprise
are.
inspections to KFC franchise locations until the day he died at the age of 90 in 1980. Now, before we get around to those bonus facts, I wanted to take a moment to shout out today's video sponsor, Blinkist. It's not always easy to find the time to sit down and read all the books you want. Look, I'm a pretty busy dude, so I understand that. I don't read nearly as much as I used to because I have approximately 719 YouTube channels to run. But good news! I have Blinkist, which is an app that
That's
you
funny.
can download, and it offers I'm just opening up right now. It offers easy to digest 15-minute summaries of some of the best non-fiction books out there. There's more than 3,000 of them in this app. You can either read them, 15-minute summaries, or you can listen to them. For me, I tend to listen because I often do it when I'm walking someplace or going to work, stuff like that. There are 14 million active users currently using Blinkist to get the best insights and need-to-know info from thousands of books. Self-help to business to health. Whatever you're into, it is going to be on there. They also
Not
have
for me,
excellent
though.
curated lists.
This is
where
a
the Blinkist
non-fiction.
team
I
and
like
also
fiction,
guests put
really
together
fiction.
some specific
Yeah.
recommendations, like how to future-proof yourself, or just some of their favorite
That's for
books.
you, though.
And of course,
You could
can
use that.
download and
I
listen
got a lot of
to
stuff I
them
need.
off.
Well, no.
I've been reading a bunch of stuff. I've got Factfulness open here.
I don't have time
I was
to read
having
at
a
the
look at that. What else? I've talked about stuff on here before, and honestly, if you've got a book that you've read, or you know,
The only time I ever read something is when I'm in queue, or just waiting for something.
The chances are that it's in there. The first 100 people to go to blinkist.com/TIFO.
Oh, by the way,
will
this
get
video
1
is
week
from
to try it out.
2 years
So
ago,
get
so-
25%
Oh.
off if you
So-
want full membership. 7-day trial. Cancel anytime. Blinkist.com.
That deal might be over.
TIFO, and there is a
Probably
link
is.
below, and let's get into those bonus facts. Before we get into Dave Thomas's fascinating story, let's talk about why Colonel is pronounced Colonel, shall we? Colonel ultimately derives from the Latin columna, meaning pillar. This gave rise to the Old Italian compaga colonnella, meaning Little Column Company. This in turn gave us the rank of Colonello, the leader of a column. Other nations adopted this ranking, giving us the Middle French Coronel. This was pronounced pretty much like it looks at first, and then later slurred down to Colonel by the English, but using the same spelling. However, starting with the French around the 1540s, the spelling was changed back closer to the Italian spelling, which gave us Colonel, spelled C-O-L-O-N-E-L, in French. Within a few decades, the English also followed suit, and by the mid-17th century, Colonel was the most common way to spell the word in English, like this. At that time, the common pronunciation was mixed between the older Colonel with a K and the new Colonel with a C, with the former winning out in the end, despite the way that it's spelled. Moving on from there, as alluded to, the founder of Wendy's, Dave Thomas, actually once saved KFC and used it as his launching point to create his own franchise, which today has almost 7,000 locations. So how did he do this? Much like the Colonel, Thomas entered the workforce quite young, first working at a Knoxville restaurant at the young age of 12 years old, from which he was eventually fired due to a misunderstanding with his boss about a vacation. At 15, he worked part-time at the Hobby House restaurant in Fort Wayne. When his adoptive father and stepfamily, Thomas never met or knew who his biological parents were, as his mother gave him up as a baby owing to the Great Depression, they decided to move. Feeling ready to strike out on his own, he decided to drop out of high school and stay in Fort Wayne. He then moved into the YMCA and started working full-time at the Hobby House. While dropping out of high school to work at a restaurant most decidedly wouldn't work out for most in terms of long-term fame and fortune, it was through his job at the Hobby House restaurant that he would meet none other than Colonel Sanders himself, who later became Thomas's mentor. Many years later, after a stint in the Korean War as a cook in the army for which he volunteered, in 1962, Thomas used the money he earned there to invest in and was placed in a managerial position over 4 of Colonel Sanders' KFCs that were failing. He saw that one of the problems with KFC and all fast food restaurants at the time was that their menus were much too complicated. Thus, he worked with Colonel Sanders to drastically simplify the menus at KFC, focusing on a few select signature meals, and it absolutely worked. Soon, business was booming, and other fast food chains and restaurants quickly adopted the same approach, which is still common to this day. Not the last fast food restaurant staple that Thomas would be responsible for, as we'll get into momentarily. But before that, we should also point out that Thomas was also the one who introduced the KFC trademark sign featuring a revolving red striped bucket of chicken. In any event, after he had turned these failing KFC restaurants around, he then sold his stake in them back to Colonel Sanders for a significant profit over what he had originally paid, receiving $1.5 million in the sale, about $12 million today. Rather than kicking back on a beach somewhere with a few scantily clad ladies and some margaritas for the rest of his life, Thomas instead took this money and ultimately opened the first Wendy's old-fashioned hamburgers on November the 15th, 1969. If you're wondering here, the restaurant was named after his fourth child, Melinda Lou Thomas, who was nicknamed Wendy, as in her formative years she pronounced her own name, Melinda, as Wenda. Among the innovations Thomas would soon introduce at his restaurant were, among other things, being the first to successfully implement a drive-through pickup in a restaurant, which is of course now used by pretty much all fast food restaurants. Wendy's was also the first to successfully create a fast food style restaurant that didn't pre-cook its food nor used pre-made frozen items. He credits his ability to do this with knowledge he gained in cooking for over 2,000 soldiers daily while in the army. Upon his death in 2002 of cancer, there were over 6,000 Wendy's restaurants across the world, and today there are close to 7,000, some of which are actually still owned and run by the original Wendy, Melinda Thomas herself, along with her 3 sisters. And incidentally, realizing that his later success as a high school dropout might convince other teenagers that it was okay to quit school, in the early 1990s at the age of 61, Thomas became a student at Coconut Creek High School, ultimately earning his GED. Along the way, he was voted by his classmates as most likely to succeed, and well, they nailed that one. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below. Don't forget to support our fantastic sponsor, Blinkist, link below. And thank you for watching.
So I gotta find that Claudia Sanders restaurant.
Where is it?
Yeah, I gotta find it to...
Do you want me to check it out?
Oh, after the video.
Okay.
But definitely gotta try that restaurant.
Next time we'll be there. There's probably Kentucky or maybe Salt Lake City as well.
Yeah.
Somewhere. Or somewhere totally different. Who knows? Who knows?
Hopefully it exists still.
Hopefully, yeah. Well, it's... Oh, yeah. It's that there'd been pandemic in that time. It could have closed.
Well, it's pretty cool how Dave Thomas knew Colonel Sanders.
Mm.
You know.
Did you work in KFC ever?
No.
No.
Wish I did. It'd be nice. Find out their secret recipes. Cook at home. Add like a little more salt. Hey, it's my own. I just added salt to it.
Apparently KFC just follows like Spice Girls and like some people with some herbs in names or something like that. It's just because that's what.
Oh yeah, 7 herbs and spices.
Something like that. Yeah, like a
You told me about that
thing,
one. Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, did you learn something new? Except the fact that the guy from Wendy's knew yeah, I don't know.
I heard about that from a different video that we watched. The Claudia Sanders restaurant.
That's new.
That's new. Yeah. God, glad I watched this video. If I didn't know, no, I look forward to a new restaurant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you hear about Claudia Sanders? What was it? There was some like a second name to it.
Yeah, I don't know.
A second part to it. Claudia Sanders restaurant. And have you been in it? We haven't. We haven't heard it till now.
Please comment and let me know how it is. Is it better than KFC? I would like to know.
He loves KFC. He loves all of the fast foods.
Yes. I haven't been to KFC in years, and then when I finally got the opportunity to go to one, triple portions. I was so full.
That was only like in the past 3 weeks.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. They had this thing called a Kentucky Gold chicken burger. Oh, amazing. That sauce was delicious.
I haven't had a chance to try it.
It was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alright. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow, and I'll see Eric in next week on Friday. Bye.
See ya.